Okay, Pasco County, Florida is projected to grow 100% in the next 20 years. Let's go into some pros and cons about what it's like to live in Pasco County. Okay, so Pasco County sits on the north side of the Tampa area. It's a big rectangle of a county. It's actually a really big geographic county. Right now, there's a little over 500,000 people that live in Pasco County. It is projected to grow over 1 million in the next 20 years. I've seen 20 years and I've seen 30 years. We'll see how fast it actually grows. Between 20 and 30 years, it's gonna double in size. That is a big change. And the locals, of course, have their own concerns about it. I wanna go into those a little bit with these pros and cons, but if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. This is the Living in Tampa channel, and we make videos for you about what it's like to live and move to the whole Tampa area. Let's jump right into the cons of living in Pasco County. First of all, before I even jump into that, I live in Pasco County, so this is my perspective in here. This is not just me looking at it as an outsider. This is some of the details that I feel on a day-to-day basis with these pros and cons. Con number one is growth. Yeah, it's projected to grow. Cool. That is just a strain on everything when it's growing. Mostly it's a strain on traffic. And it's already a little congested because there's just not a lot of traffic systems built out in Pasco County. It's a pretty rural county. There's a lot of undeveloped land. Actually, a third of the county is preserved land. We'll get into that. But because of that, there's not a lot of like interstate kind of roads in this county. Starting over on the west side of the county, you have US 19 that goes north and south. It's a state highway. It's super congested. It's just super slow. As you go a little further east, you go to Little Road, which goes through Newport Richey still. Newport Richey is the biggest town in the county. Then as you go further east, you hit Veterans Expressway, 589, big toll road, super nice. You can go further east, you hit US 41. You go further east, you hit I-75. There's some of those, but it's just not really built out. And then you're across your east-west roads are Highway 54 and then Highway 52. So it is kind of a big grid of roads, but traffic gets pretty bad because it's just main commute paths for all those roads. And real quick on those commute paths, let's hop into con number two. Con number two is a lack of jobs. So this county for a long time has been a bedroom county for the Tampa area. So people live up here, they commute down into Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, these areas, and work. Their bedrooms are up here in Pasco County. I'm in Starkey Ranch right now, big neighborhood, and this is a good example of like a nicer neighborhood, higher income, but people still commute down into Tampa to work. Now maybe that's gonna change. They're building some new facilities, Moffitt's building a new cancer research facility. There's commercial development happening like crazy, but they're still not a big job provider in Pasco County. Now that could change, or it could just become even more of a bedroom community. But because of that, it gets pretty congested on typical commute paths at typical commute times. And it's just a different vibe. Whenever it's kind of a bedroom community, it's a neighborhood and it's kind of the stuff around it to support the neighborhood. It's a different vibe than if people kind of live, work, and play all in the same area. I don't love that phrase, live, work, and play. But whenever you're thinking about where you live, wherever you're thinking about where you want to move to, those are kind of the factors in your mind. And those are always the factors we jump into on our first Zoom call with our new clients. If you're thinking about moving to the area, we'd love to connect. We love to just get into like, hey, where do you work? Where do you want to live? What kind of house do you want to live in? What does the neighborhood look like and feel like? And then also, what do you like to do for fun? We want to make sure you know where that stuff is. You still have easy access to those kind of things too. Okay, next con on the list is schools, specifically public schools. They're not the greatest in this county. Now, as a realtor, I'm supposed to be cautious about how I talk about schools, but our clients are typically looking at, greatschools.org, they're looking at niche.com, they're looking at these kind of rankings, and there's a couple pockets in Pasco County they choose. But just kind of overall, there's a lot of the schools that they avoid. Now, I homeschool my kids. I should say my wife homeschools our kids. So we're not thinking about it the same way as a lot of people. I also grew up in a super small town where you have one school you can go to, and I didn't have a choice, and my parents didn't have a choice. And so I don't really think that deep about it, but it's a big deal to a lot of our clients, and we're often helping them navigate these specific areas where the schools have higher rankings. And a good school is different to everyone. Like, what it means for a school to be good is different for each family, each person. So that's another thing we always get into. Like, what is a good school for you? I think that's a really important question to answer. And then what are you willing to compromise to have that school that's perfect for you? Is it location? Is it, you know, distance from work? Is it the size of your house? Is it your budget? Like some of those things that end up moving a little bit to make sure you can get the school you really want. This neighborhood here, Starkey Ranch, has a K-8 school right up there at the front of the neighborhood. That's super cool. And we recommend that to clients all the time because depending on what age range their kids are in, they can stay in the same school for a little bit longer. They can walk their kids to school a lot of the year or drive their golf cart over there. It makes it really easy whenever it's right there at the front of the neighborhood. And these bigger neighborhoods often do that, have some kind of school right there connected to it, whether it's in the neighborhood or really close by. That is a really common development. When these neighborhoods hit a certain size, they have to provide a certain amount of green space. They have to provide parks and libraries and schools and those kind of things. And so when they get big, they have to make those kind of additions per state requirements. Okay, final con on our list is reputation. I've got a funny story to go along with this, but Pasco County doesn't always have the best reputation. Maybe it's because it's kind of rural, or maybe it's because, that's the main reason why, if we're being honest. My in-laws grew up in Pinellas County. Father-in-law is born and raised there, and he just talks about Pasco County like it's full of rednecks or something. And it does kind of get that reputation, which is kind of odd to me because you do have really nice neighborhoods like this, and people from out of state gravitate toward this county as opposed to the other counties, which is really interesting to me. Like in general, compared to Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, the other two main counties that make up the Tampa area, Pasco County has a lot more forest, it's a lot more rural, it's a lot more spaced out, and it is kind of like a bedroom community. It's mostly neighborhoods and the things to support those neighborhoods like we mentioned. So there are a couple areas in Pasco County that are a bit older. The west side of Newport Richey over by the water, that's older, smaller houses, a lot of rent houses. It's been featured on, you know, cops in the past and live PD at some point, and it's a little different. But once these towns hit a certain size, like 100,000 people, you kind of get this more mixture of those kind of things. And honestly, I think it was the sheriff of the county that kept bringing this attention to these reality shows that kind of painted Pasco County and Newport Richey in a pretty bad light for a while. If you are interested in relocating to the Tampa area, don't forget to sign up for our webinar. We do these every other week, super fun. Usually 10, 20 people there. We get to go into some explanation on things and feature insurance brokers and answer a lot of questions. So don't forget to sign up for the next webinar down there in the description. Okay, let's jump into the pros. Now, I chose to live in this county. I lived in Pinellas County before. So the pros are real pros to me and to a lot of our clients as well. A lot of our clients choose this area for these specific reasons. I mentioned the preserve area, the amount of preserve in the county a little bit before. 1/3 of the county is preserve land, meaning it cannot be built on. If someone bought preserve land in this area, they'd have to own 1,000 acres to even be able to build one house. So preserves are really valuable to the state. They help with, you know, water movement. They help with the wildlife. There's tons of wildlife in this area, and not just like gators and snakes, but birds and all kinds of wildlife. Super important. I think this is a major pro when you compare it to the growth. Yeah, Pasco County is going to grow in population, but 1/3 of the county is always going to be preserve. And even this Starkey Ranch, you know, this was owned by the Starkey family, this neighborhood, but they donated 18,000 acres to the state and made it preserved so that it can never be built on. So you have both of those things happening at once, and that makes a really cool kind of wildernessy Florida environment. And right now in the middle of this neighborhood, like I'm surrounded by super old oak trees with moss hanging all over them, and it's kind of manicured but kind of rustic, and you get that feel all throughout the county. I think that's super cool. Pro number 2 is neighborhoods. So Starkey Ranch here is a good example. Further down the road, you have Astoria, and then down into Land O'Lakes and Odessa, further into Odessa, into Wesley Chapel, and then over this way into Newport Richey, you have tons of neighborhoods that people really love. People go out of their way to choose these neighborhoods. There's a lot of diversity, whether it's a more green space one like Starkey Ranch, or it's a more manicured kind of resort style feel like Epperson or Murata. Or Angeline and Land O'Lakes is kind of going to be in between those, where, yeah, it is a little bit more resort feel. You're going to have the big Crystal Lagoon and those kind of things, but you also have the Angeline Preserve and this like green space barrier between this town center that they're building there, where there's apartments and going to be shopping and stuff like that. There's this big green space, I forget what they call it, some big green belt. That's the preserve, has trails going through it, and then you have the neighborhood. And then within the neighborhood, there's all kinds of woods and water all around. So the neighborhoods in Pasco County are really unique, and there's kind of a little bit for everybody. Pro number 3 for Pasco County is the future, specifically the future appreciation of these properties. So as the area grows, and as it grows out in these outer rings more and more, those inner rings, where all these neighborhoods like this are gonna get really valuable, because they're gonna be a little bit closer to main job centers, a little bit closer to the beach, a little bit closer to, the airport or tourist attractions. And when I say tourist attractions, I mean like stadiums and downtown and those kind of things. These areas that are a little bit more in are gonna appreciate really well. And as the area just grows in general, appreciation is just gonna keep going up. Now, overall, the past year, the Tampa area didn't appreciate that much, really like 0.5% on the median home price. When compared to other cities, it didn't appreciate very much at all compared to a lot of other cities last year. But this county is gonna continue to grow and continue to appreciate. Okay, pro number 4, and this was a big deal for me and is a big deal to a lot of you, there's just lower taxes here. Sales tax is a little bit lower than Pinellas County and Hillsborough County, and property taxes are a bit lower. Now, some of that is because home values are just a little bit lower, so then the assessed value is a bit lower. But there's just less to be taxed on. The schools don't tax you as much, except when you're in a newer neighborhood like this. When you have like a CDD neighborhood, the community development district is an additional tax to build out all the infrastructure of these neighborhoods. That would be added onto your property tax. Now that would be specific to each property, specific to each neighborhood. But in these bigger neighborhoods like Starkey Ranch or like Epperson or like Angeline, imagine that's typically $2,000 to $3,000 a year for these newer homes, newer neighborhoods with nice infrastructure all around them. But overall, your tax burden in Pasco County is quite a bit lower than Hillsborough County or Pinellas County. Okay, final pro number 5, lower utility cost, like way lower, especially compared to Pinellas County. Maybe it's the distance of how far the electricity has to travel, or like Pinellas County is a little bit isolated. It's a peninsula, it's densely populated. When I moved from Pinellas County to Pasco County, my electric bill, and now I'm in unincorporated Pasco County, which is pretty common. There's a lot of the area that's unincorporated. It's not managed by a city, it's managed by the county. And when I moved from Tarpon Springs to unincorporated Pasco County, my electric bill went down like 40%. Now you might say, oh, but you lived in an old house before. I did, older house, new insulation, new AC, but current house is bigger. We have a pool, the AC is older, and it's still way cheaper to cool it and to heat it. Mostly cool it, you don't heat your house very much around here. And then on top of that, our trash is cheaper, our water is cheaper, our sewer is cheaper. Like all of it is quite a bit cheaper than in Pinellas County. And it's not like that is a huge difference, but it is a difference, and it's often something to keep in mind that's gonna always stay a little bit lower than the surrounding areas. Taxes, utilities, your prices, that's nice. All right, if you made it this far, you're probably curious about Pasco County, but you might be curious about some of the other counties, and we would love to hear from you. Give us a call, text, or email anytime, and we'd love to hop on a Zoom call or just hop on the phone call and just process with you and see how we can best help. If you're thinking about relocating to the Tampa area, don't forget to download our relocation guide as well. It's down there in the description. Thanks for coming by.